Hello, I'm Kurma and welcome. In this series we're going to show you how to cook a wide variety of international vegetarian cuisine from over 30 countries. And in this edition we're going to show you how to prepare the second in the series of 2 Italian-style lunches, consisting of potato dumplings with tomato sauce, gnocchi, asparagus with oil and lemon sauce, and peach sorbet. So let's begin. I thought I'd start off today by showing you how to make a very famous Italian preparation known as gnocchi. Although they're not a true pasta, they actually replace pasta in a meal. They're little potato dumplings and they're soaked in a tomato sauce. They're very delightful and very delicious. Let's take a look at our ingredients over here, shall we? Here's a couple of Idaho baking potatoes. The reason I've chopped the ends off is because I got the exact weight. For this recipe you need to measure exactly 17.5 ounces or 500 grams of nice mealy old baking potatoes that are going to be used for mashing. These are part of our dumplings. The other ingredients for our dumplings are over here on our plate. In the center there we've got 1.5 cups of self-raising flour, or self-rising flour as some people call it. We've got half a teaspoon of salt, a quarter of a teaspoon of nutmeg and a tablespoonful of cold milk. Now for the sauce, the lovely tomato sauce, we've got a bowl of lovely olive oil here, virgin olive oil, 3 tablespoons, a quarter of a teaspoon of yellow asafoetida powder. This is my special addition to this great recipe. A teaspoon of salt, a quarter of a teaspoon of freshly cracked black peppercorns. We've got a couple of tablespoons of chopped fresh parsley, a couple of tablespoons of basil leaves here. There'll be a couple of tablespoons after they're chopped. This 3.5 cups of lovely fresh tomato puree for our tomato sauce. And over here we've got some Parmesan cheese. This is going to be grated and sprinkled on top of our gnocchi. So, first thing I'm going to do here is to peel my potatoes. It's interesting to note this recipe for gnocchi calls for mashed potatoes as the binding agent for our little dumplings. There's only a little bit of liquid added to this, that is a little bit of milk. The rest of the moisture content is coming from the potatoes, so it's very important you choose the right sort of potatoes. These older baking style potatoes are definitely the ones you should try to get a hold of. And it's a good idea to peel them first for this, and then we can take them straight out of the water and mash them. We're going to mash them through a sieve actually, so they're very fine. For that you might need a potato ricer, which is an interesting accessory in the kitchen. You put the whole soft cooked potatoes inside and you turn a handle and the potatoes come out the other side all shredded up in tiny little noodle shapes, and of course it makes it very easy to deal with. Otherwise you can just get a masher and mash them really well. Well, over here on my stove I have a pot of water which is coming to the boil, and in a moment I'm going to plunge my potatoes into the pot and start cooking them up, and simultaneously I'm going to cook my tomato sauce. So by the time the sauce is done, my potatoes should be ready to mash, and we can continue on for this very lovely gnocchi. So let's chop these potatoes in quarters, shall we? There we go. Let's take them over to our boiling water. Yes, it's boiling very nicely. Let's plunge our potatoes in there, shall we? Like so. There's about 1.5 teaspoons of salt in this water too. That'll help the potatoes in their cooking process. While they are cooking, let's start our tomato sauce, shall we? Well, on our back flame here we've got a little frying pan, a little flame underneath it now. Let's put in our olive oil and commence to cook down our tomatoes. Lovely golden olive oil. Let's sprinkle in a bit of yellow asafoetida powder, shall we? Lovely fragrance. And pop in our tomatoes. Our salt and pepper. And there's one more ingredient that we're going to add for our tomato sauce here, and that's our lovely fresh basil. We haven't chopped it up yet, so let's do that, shall we? Take a lovely big sharp knife, turn our basil leaves out onto the board and give them a nice chop. Wonderful fragrance of basil wafting out. Definitely my favourite herb. at least next to fresh coriander anyway. Let's put this in our tomato sauce here now, shall we? There we go. Very nice. Well, our potatoes look like they're practically done here now. Let's give them a stab and have a look to make sure. Butter soft. We're going to take those out now. Let's just check our sauce. It's looking nice too. Thick and rich and tomatoey. Let's take it off the flame for now and out with the potatoes. Drain all the moisture off them. They're wonderful, these baking potatoes. They're very, very obedient. They don't disintegrate in the water. Ideal for this gnocchi. So now we're going to mash our potatoes. We're going to mash them through a sieve into a large bowl. So let's pop them in our sieve, get our masher, and resting that on the side, push the potatoes through. This makes sure that you have a very, very fine mashed potato. See, it's all falling through. Doesn't that look lovely? Just go round and around and around until there's no potato left in this sieve. You have to have a good strong sieve, otherwise you'll push the bottom out of it. Alternatively, a potato ricer or one of those French machines called a moule does an excellent job for this. That's about it for inside the sieve. There's some potatoes hanging out on the bottom here, feeling a little hesitant before they go into the bowl. There they all go. Let's put that aside. There's a lovely batch of finely mashed potatoes. So what I'm going to do next is to sieve my flour into that bowl, like so. This is all very carefully measured out. And the potatoes and the flour together are going to make our lovely dumplings. So potatoes and flour together. Next, let's add our salt and our milk and our nutmeg for a lovely subtle nutmeg flavour. Like so. Now let's very, very quickly, with a spoon, mix this up. I'm going to use my hands at this point to make a smooth dough. Then we're going to turn our dough out onto our board and make our little dumplings. If you do measure the ingredients wrong, you'll end up either with a very slimy mixture or you'll have something which has got so much flour in it that those dumplings will be like tennis balls. So it's very important for this to measure everything very nicely. So there's our gnocchi dough. Let's knead it for a little while here on our board, very carefully, till all those ingredients are very well combined together, like so. Let's gather it all into a ball here. Just wipe my hands off at this point. Now we're going to sprinkle a little bit of flour on our bench, a little bit of extra reserve flour through our sieve, lightly floured board, like so. Roll our dough very gently on our floured board. Bring in a knife and chop our dough very carefully into 4. Let's put 3 of these little quarters aside. Now each one of your little quarters you have to now roll into a tubular shape or cylindrical shape about 1 inch in diameter. So keep rolling on our floured board until we get to our desired thickness, like so. Maybe just a little wee bit more. Very soft, silky dough. Let's repeat that for the other 3 pieces. What we're going to do next is to cut up our little tubes here, our little cylinders of dough, into little dumplings. It's important to do this as quick as you can so that dough doesn't dry out. Get it while it's nice and moist and warm. That's number 3. Let's grab our number 4 lump of dough here. Roll it into a little cylinder. There we have it. So there's our 4 little cylinders of dough. What we're going to do next is to cut all of them into little pieces, like so. 1/2 inch wide gnocchis. Now we're getting close to the gnocchi shape. Good sharp knife is important here. We're getting quite a few gnocchis out of this batch. They're very, very sustaining and very filling. So there's our little gnocchis. Now let's clear the decks here and get a bit of space for our next very interesting step in our gnocchi making expedition here. What you need now is a sieve, and we need to get the medium hole of the sieve and taking each piece of pastry, pressing it up against the holes of the sieve with your first 2 fingers like this. So on one side of the gnocchi you get your 2 finger marks, and on the other side of the gnocchi you get these lovely little dimples. And you go through one at a time and make these little dimpled dumplings of pastry. Then we're going to boil them all up in lightly salted water and plunge them into our tomato sauce. Very, very simple and delightful. There we have a lovely plate of gnocchi, looking very authentic indeed. What we have to do at this point in time is take them over to our boiling water. This is the most crucial step in our gnocchi making, although it's very, very straightforward. Here's my lovely pot of water which is boiling very vigorously. We're going to take 1/4 of a batch of gnocchi at a time, plunge them into the water, and you'll see a few interesting things happen. So let's go straight away, shall we? Now, the first thing that you'll notice is that they'll all sink, like they're doing right now. But all of a sudden, they'll start to float to the top. Now, after the last one floats to the top, you have to count to 60. Now, looks like they're just about, here they come. Ooh, here comes the first one, and the second one. Now, as they come up, have your spoon ready, but don't touch them at this point in time. Just be very patient. Wait for the last one, and then count to 60. There we go, 1 to go, 2 to go. Right, now let them boil rapidly for 60 seconds, and then they'll be ready to come out. Here they go. Out comes our first batch of gnocchi. Now, because there's self-raising flour inside, they've puffed up a little bit. Here they go. The last of our lovely gnocchi. Well, I've turned on our sauce a little bit to rewarm it, and our lovely hot gnocchi are now going to be slid carefully into our sauce. We're going to simmer it for some time together. Here we go. Slippery little fellows, aren't they? Let's grab our wooden spoon. Very gently submerge them in our sauce. These are looking absolutely incredible. See how they look like a variety of pasta. When it's time to serve your gnocchi, make sure there's a nice beautiful bowl to serve it in. Let's turn our flame off. Give everybody a good ample serving. If you like, you can take some tomato sauce out and you can put it aside, and the guests can pour it on their own individual serve of gnocchi. Well, this is looking really wonderful. Here's a little serving suggestion. Last but not least, we can sprinkle a little bit of parsley on top, just a dash, and a good helping Parmesan cheese, and we have a wonderful course in our Italian-style lunch. Potato dumplings and tomato sauce, gnocchi. The beauty of our next dish lies in its simplicity. Steamed asparagus with oil and lemon sauce. It's a typical dish from northern Italy, the Veneto region in fact, where it's served as antipasto or entree to a meal. Let me show you the ingredients here for this ultra simple, ultra delicious dish. Here's a very healthy looking bunch of asparagus. There's actually 500 grams here, or about 1 pound. Over on our platter here, we have the juice of 1 large lemon, 3 tablespoons of virgin olive oil, half a teaspoon of salt, quarter of a teaspoon of freshly ground black pepper. We're going to freshly grind it out of our lovely grinder here. We're going to need a quarter of a teaspoon of freshly grated nutmeg from our fresh nutmeg here. And on our cheese platter in the front here, we have some lovely Parmesan cheese. We're going to grate up about 4 tablespoons of Parmesan cheese to go on top of our hot asparagus. I must admit, asparagus is one of my favourite vegetables. It's interesting to note that asparagus was a very ancient vegetable, known even in the time of the Romans, where it was a very famous and popular item on their banquet tables. Now, to prepare our asparagus, we need to cut off the woody part at the bottom here. To tell where to cut, I generally bend it back like that, and wherever it cracks, that's a good place to cut. So let's take a very sharp knife here and cut off all that part. I'm not going to waste this, by the way. I'm going to pop this aside and use it for our vegetable stock. Now, on my burner here, I have a nice pot of hot water, which I just took off the boil a few minutes ago. And sitting inside it is a lovely vegetable steamer. You notice here, I've got an arrangement where the asparagus doesn't actually touch the boiling water, but it cooks by way of steam. That's also a much healthier way of cooking. It preserves the green colour, and it also preserves the vitamin content of your vegetables. When you buy asparagus, it's often wrapped up with a rubber band. You can't steam it with the rubber band on. Often the rubber band melts. I've retied this with a couple of pieces of string, and it's tied very tightly. This keeps your asparagus together, makes it very easy to steam it. So our steamer's coming to the boil here. Let's pop it in and put a lid on top, shall we? Well, while that's steaming away, we're going to make our sauce. Let's grab our bowl here. Let's combine some of our ingredients. We've got our virgin olive oil. This is a must for that true Italian flavour. Freshly squeezed lemon juice. There's our salt. It's interesting to note that today's lunch is low in calories and fats. Experts have recommended that our daily intake of calories should be made up of no more than 30% fats. This reduces our risk of heart disease and cancers. A vegetarian diet, as today's lunch demonstrates, is great for staying within those guidelines. So there's our sauce all done. Let's take a peek at our asparagus here now. It's looking wonderful. Let's give it the stab test here, shall we? Oh, butter soft. All right. It's time to come out. Let's very carefully lift up our delicate little bunch of asparagus here. Take it over to our platter. Very nice decorative platter here. Mother of pearl. Let's cut off our string here very carefully, like so. There's one. Very hot. The way to serve this, of course, is as soon as it's hot, put it onto platter and rush it out to the guests. It's important to serve this as hot and steaming as possible. Now, while it's still hot, we have to very, very quickly pour our lemon and oil sauce all over, so like so. Ooh, what magnificence. Like so. And a little bit of nutmeg. What a divine fragrance. Incomparable. Some fresh black pepper. And some Parmesan cheese. For a wonderful, wonderful Italian entree. Asparagus with lemon and oil sauce. I have a second job in the circus, actually. Seriously though, a meal is not complete without a sweet, and I thought I'd show you a lovely Italian dessert here called peach sorbet, using, guess what, peaches. It's a real palate cleanser. It can be served as a dessert or an entree or in between courses. We're going to serve this one as a dessert today. Let's have a look at our ingredients for our lovely peach sorbet. Over here we've got 4 nice ripe peaches. These are the ones I didn't drop when I was juggling. And we've also got some sugar. There's 1/2 of a cup of sugar. We've got 2/3 of a cup of water. And we've got the juice of 1 large juicy lemon. Very simple ingredients. Now, first thing we're going to do is to make our sugar syrup. That means we're going to add our sugar and our water and our lemon juice into our little pan here. Let's pop a little flame underneath there, like so, and let's add our ingredients. This sugar syrup we're going to add to our semi-cooked peaches. Sugar and water and lemon juice. Pretty straightforward. Let's give it a bit of a stir, and we're going to cook that up to make a syrup. Now over here in our large pot, we have some water which is almost coming to the boil. When that comes to the boil, we're going to plunge in our peaches. In fact, I think it's coming to the boil right now. Yes. Okay, let's go over there and pop in our peaches. Now, these peaches are going to be in here only for 1 minute. This is just to help the skins loosen up. And then we're going to remove them. While we're over on the stove here, let's have a look at our sugar syrup. It's coming to the boil here. We're going to cook this down until it becomes like a syrup. I'm going to increase the heat a little bit, like so. Now it's boiling. That's going to boil for about 3 minutes, which time we're going to remove it and put it in the fridge. And we're going to add our chilled syrup to our peaches. Now back over in our peaches, they're not doing anything here. They're just lounging around in the warm water, having a bit of a bath. It's interesting to know about sorbet. If you've had mistakes before with making sorbet, it could be that your sugar is over the top. There shouldn't be any more than 40% of sugar, 40% of the actual weight of the peaches or whatever fruit you're using for sorbet. If you use more than 40%, then you're likely to have a result which won't freeze properly. Any more than 40% sugar means the whole sorbet will not turn into its proper frozen consistency. Also, a good sorbet should have the consistency of snow, not ice. So our peaches have been in there for 1 minute. They've actually got 5 seconds left to go. Well, anyway, 5 seconds here or there won't make any difference. Let's pop them onto our plate. In fact, let's grab a plate and bring it over, make the whole operation a bit more secure. There we go. Our sugar syrup's got another 2 minutes. Give me a yell when the 2 minutes is up. Okay, let's turn off the water for our peaches and come back over here to the cutting board. Now let's peel these little fellows, shall we? Wonderful aroma of hot peaches here. Let's try our knife. This is probably going to work. Ah, yes, here we go. Now I remember trying this sorbet some years ago. It was shown to me by an Italian lady, and she was growing peaches in her own garden. And they were absolutely stunning. They were those big white fleshed peaches, which I couldn't get a hold of any today to show you, but they make the best sorbet. There we are. The last bit of skin off our peaches. That was a pretty simple procedure. So all our peaches have been peeled. Our sugar syrup has come to the boil. I've turned it off. It's been boiling for 3 minutes actually. There it is, a nice thick sugar syrup. Now it's time to cut up our peaches, like so. Take out the little stone in the middle. Lucky these aren't clingstones. Some types of stone fruit, the stones don't come out, and it makes it very difficult to deal with. Now, next step of the sorbet operation here, Operation Sorbet, is to pop our peaches into our blender. You could use a food processor. I hope this is going to work. Let's see what happens. Just as I expected. Okay, let's take a little water. Tiny little bit. Should help it on its way. There we go. So we have one batch of blended peach. Let's pop our blended peaches into our bowl. Doesn't that look lovely? Brilliant colour. Beautiful, and the aroma is stunning too. Now here we have a batch of hot syrup. We don't need to add the hot syrup, in fact we shouldn't, but what we do have in the fridge is a batch of chilled syrup, which I put in there earlier. Made a batch of syrup, so I could continue the recipe all the way through. Same syrup, or at least the same in quantities, but this is icy cold. So icy cold syrup into the peach. like so. Now let's whisk all our peach puree up with our sugar syrup, like so. Pretty simple operation. That's done. Now here's a Pyrex dish here that I'm going to freeze my sorbet in. This is going to be popped into the freezer and left there for some hours. Now that you need to do the day before the whole operation, so that when you come to serve it all out, it's all ready to go. And about 45 minutes or so before you actually serve the sorbet, transfer it from the freezer into the fridge. I'm going to freeze this now, but what I do have is a batch of sorbet that I made yesterday, which I've transferred out of the freezer, I've popped in the fridge, and alongside it is a beautiful serving suggestion. So let me attend to that right now. This goes in the freezer, like so. And in the fridge, ooh la la, we have sorbet and a serving suggestion. Well, here's our serving suggestion. Isn't that magnificent? We've got all sorts of fruits. We've got mangoes and grapes and 4 little dishes. And in there we're going to spoon with our ice cream scoop some lovely scoops of sorbet here, which is nice and just the right consistency. Snowy. And we have it. Lovely peach sorbet with a lovely fruit serving suggestion. Perfect end to an Italian-style lunch. And that's it for me, because that's it for this edition of Cooking with Kurma. I do hope that you'll enjoy preparing these dishes as much as I've enjoyed sharing them with you. Happy and healthy eating.